the whole thing is that if people think that I would get pleasure out of confusing someone or confounding them, that is, a bad way to think, because it's not that way. I'm trying to stay true to the ideas, translate them to film in a way that feels correct. And so some of these ideas are more abstract than others. But we have this beautiful thing called intuition. And abstractions exist way more in real life, so-called real life. And we use this intuition to get a sense of things, find the truth of something. Like detectives, we go. And the same, instruments can be used in cinema. And it's so beautiful to intuit a thing and come up with something that satisfies you. I always say it's like looking at an abstract painting. There's the painting. It never changes, just like the frames on the film. But a viewer comes up, and this circle is created. Into the viewer, the painting into the viewer, back to the painting. And every viewer is going to get a different thing from that. But the thing they get is for them, and it's precious, it's beautiful.
David Keith Lynch was born on January 20th, 1946 in Missoula, Montana. He left our world on January 16th, 2025. I always remember him as an artist who was so daring, so instrumental in creating cinematic works that changed mine and so many other perspectives of what storytelling and film can be in the abstract and absurd. The way he was able to meld and combine so many different tones created something otherworldly and dreamlike that imprinted on me forever. Lynch's films become a part of you. They crawl inside your head and never leave, permeating through consciousness and feeling. You may not always understand the meaning of his work, but you definitely feel it. In this video, I want to go over all the feature films in rapid style fashion. It could be an intimidating feat to conjure up the right words, the right expression of what his work means to me. All I can do is speak from my heart to what I think and feel about his extensive body of work. These are the films of David Lynch. Warning, spoilers ahead.
There's a baby. It's at the hospital.
Mom!
And you're the father.
Mother, they're still not sure it is a baby.
It's premature, but there's a baby.
You are sick.
Dread is one of the few words I would describe Eraserhead, David Lynch's debut feature film. It's a fear and feeling that comes over me every time I rewatch it. My first viewing of Eraserhead was something I could not prepare for. Set in an eerie industrial landscape of decay, the film follows Henry, played perfectly by the great Jack Nance, discovering that he is about to be a father to a premature mutant infant. The film is essentially about the fears of parenthood and the agony and anxiety one struggles with raising a newborn. There's not so much a narrative presented, but a situation of still chaos. We hold on to the camera and shots of Henry in that dread as he journeys further and further inside this industrial nightmare. Trapped inside with Henry in his cold little apartment with his suffering child, abandoned by his girlfriend, Henry fantasizes about the lady in the radiator, seeing him into a trance that in heaven everything is fine. His only escape from his dire reality. He lusts after his sexy neighbor and longs for a final escape from this plane of existence he finds himself in. Eraserhead is dark in every sense of the meaning. It brings a cold, disturbing feeling all over you until the final euphoric frames as Henry embraces the lady in the radiator. Even in its dreadful tone it portrays, Lynch manages to find a happy ending for Henry, even in his own fucked up way as a filmmaker. Eraserhead was a small production and a labor of love that took nearly 5 years to make before its release in 1977. It was of its time and beyond its time. It exists as timeless forever, introducing us into the creepy tone and aesthetic Lynch excels at. True to Lynch's work, it was met with polarizing and divided reactions to its first initial screenings.
Oh, I thought it was the ultimate suspense thriller. I kept waiting for something to happen and it never did.
Some inane, bizarre person with a disturbed mind wrote that film, and I did not enjoy it.
Hailed as one of the first midnight movies, it definitely lives up to its cult following and has exploded in resonance through the years and decades since its release. I love and fear everything about it. It wasn't the first Lynch film I ever saw, but definitely one that still shakes me to my core. A great and grand introduction to Lynch's filmmaking.
I am not an animal. I am a human being.
The Elephant Man is one of Lynch's most famous films, yet a lot don't realize it was directed by David Lynch, and it took me a while to realize that myself when I was first getting into his body of work. Yet it has so many staples of his tone and experimentation, his creative stamp, if you will. Produced by the great Mel Brooks. He took a chance on the then little-known director, who had broken into the scene with Eraserhead just years earlier. Brooks may have ignited the project, but Lynch fleshed it out and brought it to life. It is one of the most human and bittersweet films about a deformed man named John Merrick, played brilliantly by John Hurt, who was cast out of regular society and been made into a sideshow attraction. It isn't until Dr. Trees, played magnificently by Anthony Hopkins, finds him and rescues him for study and realizes how gentle and kind and human he actually is, that unfolds in a beautiful but tragic story about the condition of humanity and the terrors that provokes the nastiest and cruelest aspects of society. Released in 1980, it feels like classic cinema, yet like a lot of his work, it still holds the test of time and many of the themes are prevalent today. It shows Lynch's truest kindness as a human being reflected into this harrowing, touching tale. It's renowned and classic for a reason and such a grand staple in Lynch's work.
You must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Only the very strong ones travel this deep.
Russell has called a big one. Again, it is the legend.
Now we get into Dune, and Dune, well, Dune is, you know what? I'm not going to talk about Dune. In fact, I'm not going to talk about Dune at all. We're going to leave it out of it. But seriously, truth be told, Dune is one that I do not like to really revisit very often. Even though technically this was the first David Lynch film I saw as a child, I never got through the book and was never in love with the material of the story. That goes for the new Dune films as well. But still, David put a lot of his heart and creativity into this one, and it was met with much studio interference that made him ultimately disown the film. And I am one to discredit it as well, because with all the creativity and heart he put into it, the final product just doesn't feel like a Lynch film. It is not his true vision. So I'm just going to say, while I appreciate that it exists, it's just not my cup of tea with the story, but it brought the first collaboration between Lynch and Kyle MacLachlan, and that started something special. But moving on to their first great feat of cinematic brilliance.
Let's fuck! I'll fuck anything that moves!
Blue Velvet. Blue Velvet was my first real experience of a Lynch film, knowing it was directed by David Lynch. I will admit I had apprehension going into what I thought was my first Lynch film. I was 19 and thought I knew everything I loved about film, but Blue Velvet broke my pure little virgin mind and traumatized and violated me to my core. Set on the backdrop of beautiful, simple suburbia. A decapitated ear, a curious boy, a girl next door, a mysterious singer, and a vicious evil force that is known as Frank Booth. Blue Velvet has all the staples of a great American cinematic classic. It is noir, it is silly, it is frightening and brutal, and most of all, absolutely beautiful and breathtaking. Whether you love it or hate it, you cannot forget Blue Velvet. It creeps into you beneath the surface like an underbelly of insects, of infestation, intersecting your very mind. But with the darkness, there's also a light. A beautiful light, that no matter how much negativity takes over our world, there's always a bright light at the end of the tunnel. There's beauty in Blue Velvet, and there's also fear and mystery, and you can't have one without the other, especially in Lynch's work. And it's always good to appreciate the light and beauty of love when we receive it, and that is a perfect of a summation I can think of when reminiscing about Blue Velvet.
If you're truly wild at heart, you'll fight for your dreams.
In 1990, Lynch released Wild at Heart, premiering at the Cannes Film Festival and won the Palme d'Or. It is energetic and excessive. Adapted from the novel by Barry Gifford by Lynch, and starring the enigmatic Nicolas Cage and charismatic Laura Dern, Wild at Heart tells the story of Sailor and Lula. Escaping their shambles and shackles of Lula's overbearing and psychotic mother, they embark on a cross-country road trip, meeting very intriguing characters along the way. If Blue Velvet gave Lynch much recognition into the mainstream, Wild at Heart made him a bona fide rock star. And a lot of people consider Wild at Heart to be Lynch's best work, but I, on the other hand, would hold it at a lower tier personally. Don't get me wrong, I love the atmosphere and the tone shift throughout the film, but it gets a little too kooky, a little too zany and ridiculous for my taste, even by Lynch's standards. I have fun with it, but it didn't leave me with anything to ponder. I adore Cage's craziness he brings to the role. I love Laura Dern's over-the-top excessive sensuality, and Diane Ladd's evil wicked witch interpretation. There's a lot to love about it. It just doesn't quite come together for me as a whole. I don't hate it, and would call it Lynch's most fun movie, but it just doesn't leave me with much mystery or things to interpret. It just plays out more traditionally than some of his later works, which we'll get into with... Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me is trauma personified. It is sadness and abuse and how it transforms us, takes over us, and how the cycle of darkness percolates. But first, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the original series of Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks ran for 2 seasons from 1990 to 1991 before Fire Walk With Me was released in 1992. It explores similar themes of abuse and trauma, but where it was more in the background, whereas Fire Walk With Me brings it to the forefront. It was the first series to really explore cinematic experimentation and storytelling. Co-created with Mark Frost, the two creators really balanced each other out creatively, and it was the show that changed television forever. I could say so many things about Twin Peaks that have already been said before. However, in 1991, it was canceled. But out of that came an idea to follow Laura Palmer in her last 7 days of her life. With Lynch at the helm without Mark Frost and with co-writer Robert Engels, they brought to us the real story of Laura Palmer. No longer was she the center of a background character. This was to tell her story from her point of view and all the trauma that had followed her entire life. This to me was another step forward in Lynch's experimentation, something he hadn't really gone towards since Eraserhead. Not to dismiss Blue Velvet or Wild at Heart or the original series, but one could argue that Wild at Heart and Blue Velvet followed mostly a narrative structure, and although Twin Peaks had moments of experimentation, Lynch was not at the helm for every episode. Fire Walk With Me is Lynch purely unleashed. He really lets loose in his directing style and storytelling approach. The film is spread out in different sections. We have the brief telling of the aftermath of the Teresa Banks murder before enthralling into the trance of Laura Palmer's final 7 days. It raises more questions than answers, but the key isn't to understand, but to feel. To experience the pain and abuse inflicted onto Laura. Many men in Twin Peaks and beyond try to control her, to possess her, but she cannot be controlled or possessed, and in her final moments she chooses herself, even if it means her death. She forges on the ring and becomes an entity of the Black Lodge. Some could argue a fate worse than death. But in the end, when all she wanted was to be embraced by the angels, she finally becomes at peace. It is a beautiful portrayal carried on the shoulders of Cheryl Lee. Fire Walk With Me was met with a lot of angry backlash Lynch hadn't really experienced on such a level. Even though it was hated, a lot have come around since the decades past of its release because it still resonates supremely with a lot of people who have come through the other side of abuse and trauma. Fire Walk With Me had to walk to begin the journey of films that became more abstract, more darker, and going further and further into the unknown, starting with...
I like to remember things my own way, not necessarily the way they happened.
Lost Highway is wild. Lost Highway is epic. Lost Highway blew my fucking mind. Even on rewatches and reanalysis of it, continues to amaze me in an extraordinary way. This is in many ways Lynch's comeback film from Fire Walk With Me, and audiences and critics still didn't like it. They even used the Siskel and Ebert's negative review in their promotion of the film.
You know, every time I see a David Lynch picture, I think to myself, this guy is so gifted. That if he would only just break down and make a movie instead of being so clever all the time and trying to outsmart himself with basically what are sophomoric little plot devices, you know, stuff that
it would be very hard to make this convincing.
It doesn't pay off, it doesn't have a purpose, it seems contrived, it seems frustrating.
But I, for one, fucking love it. Returning with co-writer Barry Gifford, Lynch was very much inspired by the O.J. Simpson murder trial in the 90s when collaborating on the writing for this. The film follows saxophonist Fred Madison, played by Bill Pullman, and wife Renee, played by Patricia Arquette. He is very suspicious of his wife's comings and goings and cannot satisfy her. After they receive a series of mysterious videotapes where they are filmed, it's after this series of events Fred encounters the mystery man played by Robert Blake, who sworns they have met before.
We've met before, haven't we?
After Renee is killed and Fred is convicted of her murder, he transforms into another person named Pete Dayton, played by Balthazar Getty, and is released from prison where more antics and crazy hysteria occur. Yes, Lost Highway is a confusing, crazy ride about one man's guilt as he tries to escape his own truth and doom, but the truth always seems to seep through. That's as close as I can get to a brief description of Lost Highway, but it is a fucking trip and I love it more and more each time I watch it. It's not as nonsensical as people make it out to be. There's definitely a story here, filled with crazy surreal occurrences and erotic tension. Lost Highway is the ultimate Lynch 90s film, with a banger soundtrack produced by Trent Reznor, and it deserves more respect in my opinion. It's one that you have to let wash over you, and like every Lynch film, you have to feel it, not try to understand it.
Now, the worst part of being old is remembering when you was young.
Now, The Straight Story. My dear God, The Straight Story. The Straight Story is Lynch's most radical film and spiritual successor to The Elephant Man in terms of its story and themes of humanity. Based on the true story of Alvin Straight, a man who drove across from Lawrence, Iowa to rural Mount Zion, Wisconsin on a lawnmower to visit his sick brother Lyle, played by Harry Dean Stanton. Richard Farnsworth plays Alvin Straight with empathy and grace and a beautiful final performance by the actor. Adapted for the screen by John Roach and Mary Sweeney, Lynch's editor and then girlfriend, they craft a beautiful, heartfelt story about growing old and what it means to have family, which can come off as very cheesy, especially for a Disney film, but Lynch conveys the story with such eloquence, such humor, sadness, and class, showing a kindness and heart to levels we hadn't seen from him before. It tends to go under the radar in his body of work, but it's just as deserving as some of his most well-known films. It makes my heart ache in the most beautiful sense, and it really touches on a lot of primal humanity and what it means to help your fellow man. It is his most straightforward film as a narrative, but captures such a warmth and great bittersweet feeling of what it means to love your family. Catch it if you can, because it'll melt your heart and soul.
Come on, it'll be just like in the movies. We'll pretend to be someone else.
Once in a Great Blue Moon, a film like no other comes along and changes your life, and opens your mind to what a film can be. To me, Mulholland Drive is that film. Set in the backdrop of LA, a woman suffers from amnesia from a car crash. A doughy-eyed, hopeful actress dreams of becoming a great movie star. A director is losing control over his film. All of these are connected and disconnected in this dreamscape nightmare that holds so many terrible truths and secrets. Some find it baffling. Some find it nonsensical. I find it to be a masterpiece that has shaped the world of cinema forever. Mulholland Drive is my favorite Lynch film and favorite film of all time. So, yeah, I'm a little biased. At first I found it confusing and frustrating like many others, but then I dug a little deeper and found so much to fall in love with. The film begs and requires multiple rewatches, and there are endless ways to interpret the different meanings and symbolisms throughout the film, and Lynch wouldn't have it in any other way. First intended to be a television series for ABC, most of the film was shot as a pilot, which was rejected, of course, by ABC. But through that, Lynch got the opportunity to make it into a feature film and transform it into something more. It's noir 1950s mysterious aesthetic that descends into a maddening, hellish nightmare. This was Lynch's most extreme film in terms of tonal shifts. One moment it creeps you into a surreal trance, another will have you laughing at the absurdity, and another will bring you to the brink of tears. It is the amalgamation of everything Lynch had done up to this point in his filmmaking. It's about dreams, it's about identity, and with most of Lynch's work, love is at the center. This time, the betrayal of love, and how it unravels into jealousy and revenge, but also carries more themes about abuse, trauma, and looking the other way and the crime of staying silent. There are so many ideas and themes sprinkled throughout Mulholland Drive in such a subtle way that requires a heavy amount of focus and attention that some may find to be a chore. But to me, I get so many different meanings and interpretations every time I watch it. It becomes truly timeless. The cast is simply amazing, with a breakout performance by Naomi Watts, and amazing scenes with Justin Theroux and Laura Lana Herring. The film speaks to me in a lot of ways, and the commentary on how women are so disposed of in the Hollywood system rings so much truth even today, and Diane Selwyn is proof of another example of that. One of the most tragic Lynch characters next to Laura Palmer. So many brilliant scenes and sequences come to mind with nostalgic use of 50 songs from Connie Stevens to Linda Scott, but for me the most brilliant scene in all of Lynch's filmography and my favorite scene in all of cinema, Club Silencio. The whole surreal vibe and atmosphere and tone of it, how it invokes so much fear and longing and mystery where everything everything unfolds from Betty to Diane's truth. The magician MC who proclaims this is all a tape recording, that this is unreal, leading to the harsh reality of a nightmare Diane is living in, to her ultimate undoing and death. It's so beautifully tragic that it speaks to so many devastating ends, to so many Hollywood hopefuls following a dream that turns nightmarish. Yes, Mulholland Drive has so much, yet it is so beautiful in its simplicities and so mesmerizing in its complexities. I will always have so much to praise about it. Lynch's most perfect film in my eyes.
I'm trying to tell you so you'll understand how it went. The thing is, I don't know what was before or after. I don't know what happened first. And it's kind of laid a mind fuck on me.
A Woman in Trouble. That's the tagline to describe Lynch's 2006 3-hour magnum opus of Inland Empire. This was an evolution of a film, which started out as a multi-page monologue for Laura Dern, an experiment for his website davidlynch.com. He didn't have an entire script before shooting the film, so he wrote it as they went along. Inland Empire is a polarizing film even within the hardcore fan communities of Lynch's work. I love the film personally, I really do. This was David Lynch going back to basics, starting from scratch into digital filmmaking, shooting on his Sony PD-150 camera. It was a time where digital filmmaking wasn't where it was today. This was a time when my love affair of Lynch's films was blossoming, and to my surprise, while I was getting into films like Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway, that he had a new feature film coming out. The trailer struck me. Laura Dern, dark imagery, and rabbits. I was sold from the get-go. To me, this continues and concludes Lynch's Surreal Identity LA trilogy of films sharing a thematic purpose and are some of my most favorite David Lynch films, full of moments that get me so emotional and wrapped up into the mystery. What I love about Inland Empire is we get so many perceptions on people experiencing a mysterious crisis in the thick of it. An actress making a comeback, a Polish prostitute going through traumatic abuse, a mysterious phantom pulling all the strings, and a lost girl watching her life unfold. There are so many layers and realities to Inland Empire, all centering around a curse. Nikki Grace, played by Laura Dern, plays Susan Blue in this film On High and Blue Tomorrows, which is a remake where the original film found their leads murdered and some kind of curse is surrounding the production of this film. Nikki finds herself lost and trapped inside this character and her world, diving into an affair with Justin Theroux's character within a character, finds herself in an abusive marriage and succumbing into a dark world of prostitution. Is this Sue's life or Nikki's life? Is it art imitating life or the other way around? There's so much to unpack with Inland Empire, and for the life of me, I still do not 100% comprehend everything. But I do feel it emotionally. Lynch creates a beautiful conclusion to the film as the Phantom is defeated and the Lost Girl is reunited with her family and the life that she lost, the life that she watched throughout the film, and Nikki frees herself from the shackles of this cursed role. That's at least how I see some of it. Inland Empire is beautiful as it transcends through many dark alleyways into something magical and mysterious, and at the end of it, you're still not sure what you have experienced, but you know you loved every grueling minute of it.
Once we cross, it could all be different. I hope I see all of you again. What year is this?
In 2014, both David Lynch and Mark Frost announced via Twitter that Twin Peaks was indeed returning. And in 2017, we were finally greeted with Twin Peaks: The Return. You know, many will argue between the idea of it being a film or a television series. To me, The Return is an 18-hour film, and it not only defies of what a series or film can be, but also marriages the two beyond definition. There are singular stories told throughout that all contribute to the larger narrative of Twin Peaks, not only to the story of The Return, but the overall mythology captured through the original series and Fire Walk With Me. It was a behemoth of a project, and so it needs to be a behemoth of a story. We see Cooper returning, but he is not himself, even when he appears to be. The people of Twin Peaks are in dire straits as some unseeable toxicities inflicting the town's once good-natured spirit. Is Laura Palmer really dead? Or if undoing her murder is really the only way to set things right again? Is it future or is it past? These are the many moral queries brought up throughout The Return, and unlike the original series, most are left unanswered, and finally giving Lynch the chance to leave this world shrouded in surreal mystery, as he first intended the original series to be. The Return was such a gift throughout the summer of 2017, full of online speculating and theorizing and wonderment. We were so lucky to get the return when we did and how we did, with 16 beautiful weeks of watching and enduring what would be Lynch's final magnum opus. Many hailed it as masterful, while others shredded it as pretentious. I, for one, embraced every weird and absurd moment and every question and mystery it presented. Because when you have no questions to ask or ponder into the abyss of the unknown, that truly is the death of a work of art. Only is it when we are able to ask questions after questions within a film or a series or a piece of music, that's when a work of art can live forever. That truly is the gift that Lynch and Frost gave us, presenting us with a work of art that will live within us forever, and for that I am forever grateful. Yes, the films of David Lynch is a task not many people want to experience or understand, but it's truly an honor making this video, as it's been a dream of mine for a long time. And I also cannot forget to mention the powerful collaborators of David Lynch's films, from Mary Sweeney to Jack Fisk to Angelo Badalamenti to Harry Dean Stanton to Catherine Coulson to Julie Cruz to Peter Deming and countless others who helped bring his visions to life. This has been George Ray of George Reviews. Please like and subscribe if you'd be so kind. Please remember to keep calm, keep cool, keep chill. Embrace David Lynch. I'll see you on the next one. And until then, peace out.
We don't really create an idea. We just catch them like fish. No chef ever takes credit for making the fish. It's just preparing the fish. So you get an idea, and it is like a seed. And what you realize is the idea is more than you realize. And if you're true to it, when the work is finished and some years go by, you can even get more out of it if you've been true to the idea in the first place.